Hello, I'm Joseph Dillard. Your worldview includes not only the assumptions you make about what is real and what is illusory, about the world and others, it also includes who you think you are. It determines what you find important and what is not, and therefore sets your life priorities. Your worldview creates and validates your identity. An unexamined worldview works to limit what you can see, do, and how you can grow. An examined worldview allows you to choose what is helpful and discard the rest. Integral deep listening uses dreams and waking imagery to leverage us out of limited worldviews and priorities that are not aligned with our life compass. It uses script analysis, recognition of the nature of pathological trauma, cognitive distortions and cognitive biases to wake us up out of our normal waking delusions and unexamined assumptions. The key that IDL uses to leverage out of dysfunctional worldviews is something called multi-perspectivalism, which is the ability to shift our identity from who we normally experience ourselves to be to a multitude of other perspectives. There are two varieties of multi-perspectivalism, cognitive and experiential. Multi-perspectivalism can be cognitive, as in when we understand and appreciate multiple worldviews, such as those of Hinduism, Chinese humanism, economics, or anthropology. Multi-perspectivalism can also be experiential, as in when we don't simply appreciate different perspectives in a cognitively objective way, but actually become a radically different perspective from our own. We aren't simply understanding other perspectives. We are looking at the world and ourselves through their eyes, their assumptions, their beliefs, their identity. While cognitive multi-perspectivalism merely requires that we suspend our assumptions long enough to look at life from another conceptual framing, experiential multi-perspectivalism requires that we subordinate our identity, objectify our identity, our sense of self, our sense of who we are. As adults, unless we are actors, we normally just practice cognitive multi-perspectivalism, which is the comprehension of different systems of thought, belief, and worldview, as we have seen, such as different religions, cultures, nationalities, and the various divisions of science. We don't typically practice experiential multi-perspectivalism, in which we surrender our sense of self or identity. And actors don't do this either, because we are rewarded for staying in control. Multi-perspectivalism is about giving up or sharing control. That can be threatening to our basic scripting, and indeed, psychology has generally associated it with decompensation and the disintegration of personality. This is not something most of us are prepared to do, because it means surrendering control, security, and home base orientation to reality. This is not something we learn to do from our parents, in school, or at work. The closest we come is when we imagine what others are feeling and thinking and what passes for empathy for most people. However, team sports, martial arts, and the arts in general are areas of life in which the surrender of control is taught and essential. When we practice multi-perspectivalism with dream characters or the personifications of life issues, it is commonly called identification, or even possession, as in classical Greek possession by this or that muse, or by totem animals in shamanism. This is similar to what we do in IDL interviewing, experiential multi-perspectivalism. The worldview of IDL is experientially multi-perspectival. It is also polycentric. Our normal worldview is psychologically geocentric. Geocentric refers to the Ptolemaic worldview. We are the center of our world, and everything revolves around us, our meanings, interpretations, feelings, and behavior. We create our world through the assumptions we make about what we experience. Psychological geocentrism is validated by our sensory experience. The sun really does rise in the morning and set in the evening. The stars really can be seen to orbit us in the heavens. We really are the center of our experience of life. Mystical experiences can radically expand psychological geocentrism. When we experience ourselves as one with everyone and everything, with the cosmos, our sense of who we are is radically expanded. Our self becomes our self with a capital S, called Atman in Hinduism. We have now so inflated our identity that we know truth, beauty, and goodness. In this certainty that we have become one with all, we can easily believe we know universal truth. That is, what is good, true, and harmonious, not just for ourselves, but for others. This is called psychological heliocentrism, following the overturning of the Ptolemaic universe by Copernicus and Kepler. More metaphorically, we are one with the sun, the source of all life, and through its radiance, one with all things and people. As such, psychological heliocentrism represents massive self-expansion and grandiosity, although those who have such experiences never view it as such. A third perspective is provided by the post-Einsteinian and cosmological revolutions of the 20th century. It notes that the universe has no center and that every point is equally the center. It also recognizes any of these points as essentially timeless and spaceless, because without a frame of reference, there is no way to measure either. This perspective is multi-perspectival in ways psychological geocentrism and heliocentrism are not. It is polycentric or cosmocentric, rather than self, or self with a capital S, centric. This is a perspective or worldview that makes IDL a particular sort of dream yoga because it does not invest identity in the self or the capital S self, but in whatever perspective that we happen to embody at the time. While broader, more inclusive perspectives provide more freedom, choice, and control than do narrower, more exclusive perspectives, there are practical, functional circumstances, like setting your alarm clock, in which geocentrism is better than heliocentrism or cosmocentrism. Heliocentrism is better for experiencing unconditioned states of oneness. Enlightenment is not found in the abstraction or objectification of all experience, metaphorically represented by cosmocentrism, but in the ability to move back and forth among different perspectives and having the wisdom to know when and how to do so. Most people lack this degree of objectivity, freedom, and wisdom. I do most of the time. IDL teaches all three of these abilities and life competencies. So, the worldview of IDL is one of polycentric experiential multi-perspectivalism. What a mouthful. That was a lot to chew on. We will be returning to these themes in subsequent videos in an attempt to explain their relevance and practical importance. As the IDL worldview is approached from different perspectives, hopefully it will become clearer and begin to make sense. Theory exists to clarify and explain practice so that it rests on a practical and reasonable foundation. But theory can never and should never replace practice. So, these theoretical aspects of IDL are useful for knowing why you do what you do in IDL, but always emphasize the practice itself. That is what heals, balances, and transforms. Do you have questions or comments? Let us know how we can help by sharing your interests in the section below this video or at Friends of IDL on Facebook. You will find more information on Dream Yogas at dreamyoga.com and more on IDL interviewing at integraldeeplistening.com. And for those who want a deeper dive, a list of texts on integral deep listening is at the URL below. Thanks for watching. See you next time.